Stephanie Dobson is back with us again this week. Stephanie is a lawyer, mediator, and online educator with Hankett Divorce Law and Mediation offices in Lloydminster and Edmonton. And it's time for another episode of Healthy, Thriving Family After Divorce. Stephanie, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Stacey.
Well, today we're on the topic of education for children. And obviously, this could be contentious when people are going through separation and divorce and they have to agree on how this is going to work for the kids. So let's talk about decisions that need to be made when the parents are going through this, but they also need to work on figuring out the education plan for their kids. So where do we start with that?
Well, just like we talked about last week, where we talked about parallel parenting plans last week, and this week we're talking about education plans within that parenting plan. So, when parents separate, we are tasked with creating that parenting plan, which in essence will describe how parents will co-parent into the future. One of the main topics in any parenting plan is decision-making responsibilities, and there's joint or sole decision-making responsibilities for the children. When we talk about those decisions, one of the decisions happens to be education, and that's one of the major decisions. So let's talk first about how can we make those education decisions within that parenting plan. So first, my recommendation is to talk about communication between the school and the family. So is there a parent who will be the primary liaison between the school and the family? Or will it be both parents? And how does the school contact the parents? So is there one email address and phone number on file for each parent? Or is there one email address for both parents on file? Schools deal with so many different families every year that the more that they can know ahead, the better. Let's talk about the kind of education decisions that are going to be made. So do those decisions about the child's education, so whether there's a special needs program or there's an excelled program or any other kind of decisions, will that be made by one parent alone or will that be made by both parents together? So the more clarity that you can give to the school as to how those decisions are supposed to be made, the better it can be for your child.
So ideally, Stephanie, how can parents who are separated or divorced support their child's education?
Well, I feel that the most important thing that parents can do is to keep an open line of communication between the parents and the school. The school is there to support your child in their growth, development, and education. And so the more that the school is aware of your situation at home, and some of the stresses that your child or children might be going through outside of school, the more that the school can use those daytime hours within school time to support your child. If the educators, for example, know that there's a lot of conflict in the home or that the children are trying to get into a new routine, the mom and dad have just separated and we're trying to get into, moving from home to home all the time, then they might understand a little bit better about why your child might be having more difficulty in school at that very time. So, if educators don't know what's happening on the home front about your child, then they have a harder time adapting for your child when they're at school.
So, what type of communication should these parents have with the educators of their children?
Well, at the very root, I always recommend that parents and educators work together as a team for the common goal of supporting your child or children educationally. So it depends as to the situation as to what that will look like for your particular families. There may be some families that have a weekly email or an in-person meeting with various educators within the school system at certain intervals. There won't be a one size fits all for any family, but the most important thing that they can do is to open up that dialogue between the educators and the parents to make sure that you have a customized solution as to make sure your child is coping well.
Now, what if one parent has basically been the liaison the whole time and kind of handled everything, but now a separation or divorce is happening? How do we deal with that?
Well, very often that happens. When there's a one household family, one parent may end up taking the lead with respect to communicating with the school and any issues that arise from the school. But when there is a separation or divorce, quite often the roles of the parents may shift from one parent being less involved to, in fact, both parents being quite involved. So it's really important for the parents, if possible, to have that open discussion as to how will that communication between the parents and the school happen going forward. The last thing that you want to happen is for the school to be confused as to which parent they should be communicating with or whether they should be communicating with a particular parent. So, where possible, the more clarity that you can provide to the school, the better.
All right, Stephanie. Well, thank you so much for joining us once again, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Stacy.